Hi BookTube, Aaron here. Hope you're doing very well. Today for Poetry Thursday, I thought I'd spend some time talking about a poet that I've been reading recently and have been trying to get to know a little bit better. It's Elizabeth Bishop. I've been slowly making my way through her complete poems for the second time. I didn't particularly get on with her poetry the first time round, or there was the occasional poem I'd enjoy, but yeah, just didn't get much out of most of it. But I've been reading her at a much slower pace. I've been really enjoying her, and so yeah, I thought I'd do a special video sort of reflecting my experience so far. She was born in sort of the early 20th century in New England. She travelled around a lot and lived in various places in France for a while and in Brazil for quite some time, and then I think eventually ended up back in Boston. Um, and it seems like travelling and geography are a perennial fascination to her, and it turns up in a lot of her poems and in the titles of her collections. So I'll start with one poem that reflects that. The first poem in here from her first collection, North and South, and it's called The Map. The Map. Land lies in water. It is shadowed green. Shadows, or are they shallows, at its edges, showing the line of long sea-weeded ledges where weeds hang to the simple blue from green? Or does the land lean down to lift the sea from under, drawing it unperturbed around itself? Along the fine tan sandy shelf, is the land tugging at the sea from under? The shadow of Newfoundland lies flat and still. Labrador's yellow, where the moony Eskimo has oiled it. We can stroke these lovely bays under a glass as if they were expected to blossom, or as if to provide a clean cage for invisible fish. The names of seashore towns run out to sea. The names of cities cross the neighbouring mountains. The printer here experiencing the same excitement as when emotion too far exceeds its cause. These peninsulas take the water between thumb and finger, like women feeling for the smoothness of yard goods. Mapped waters are more quiet than the land is, lending the land their waves' own conformation, and Norway's hair runs south in agitation. Profiles investigate the sea where land is. Are they assigned, or can the countries pick their colours? What suits the character or the native waters best? Topography displays no favourites, north as near as west. More delicate than the historians are the map makers' colours. So that's one geography poem from Elizabeth Bishop. The next one is one where, as you might have heard from there with the sort of rhyme scheme in there, it sort of comes and goes. So she's a very formal poet, but she's not afraid to sort of play with it and relax it slightly where possible. I've got another poem that I suppose is formal, but it's like her kind of own kind of stricture that she's put on the poem, her own pattern, and she sticks to it, and it kind of grows and blooms as it goes through. It's called Visits to St. Elizabeth's from 1950. I think it's a No, it is in one of her collections. I'm trying to work out which one nice and quickly. Um, it's got lots of poems from Brazil in it. It's from Questions of Travel. This one's a bit later. So the first poem was from the mid 40s. This was actually written in 1950, but published in the mid 60s. And it gets me wondering a bit whether this poem is about Ezra Pound after his he ended up in a mental institution for some time after sort of being arrested by the Allies after being found to have said some really terrible things during the Second World War. So yeah, I wonder whether this poem is directed at him or is possibly about him. So this is Visits to St. Elizabeth's. This is the house of Bedlam. This is the man that lies in the house of Bedlam. This is the time of the tragic man that lies in the house of Bedlam. This is a wristwatch telling the time of the talkative man that lies in the house of Bedlam. This is a sailor wearing the watch that tells the time of the honoured man that lies in the house of Bedlam. This is the roadstead, all of board, reached by the sailor wearing the watch that tells the time of the old brave man that lies in the house of Bedlam. These are the years and the walls of the ward, the winds and clouds of the sea of board, sailed by the sailor wearing the watch that tells the time of the cranky man that lies in the house of Bedlam. This is a Jew in a newspaper hat that dances weeping down the ward, over the creaking sea of board, beyond the sailor winding his watch that tells the time of the cruel man that lies in the house of Bedlam. This is a world of books gone flat. This is a Jew in a newspaper hat that dances weeping down the ward, over the creaking sea of board, of the batty sailor that winds his watch, that tells the time of the busy man that lies in the house of Bedlam. This is a boy that pats the floor to see if the world is there, is flat, for the widowed Jew in the newspaper hat that dances weeping down the ward, waltzing the length of a weaving board by the silent sailor that hears his watch that ticks the time of the tedious man that lies in the house of Bedlam. These are the years and the walls and the door that shut on a boy that pats the floor to feel if the world is there and flat. This is a Jew in a newspaper hat that dances joyfully down the ward into the parting seas of board, past the staring sailor that shakes his watch, that tells the time of the poet, the man that lies in the house of Bedlam. This is the soldier home from the war. These are the years and the walls and the door that shut on a boy that pats the floor to see if the world is round or flat. This is a Jew in a newspaper hat that dances carefully down the ward, walking the plank of a coffin board, with the crazy sailor that shows his watch, that tells the time of the wretched man that lies in the house of Bedlam. So yeah, it kind of moves around quite a lot. There are bits of it that feel quite uncomfortable, and I wonder whether it's supposed to. Not entirely sure, but there's certainly something very powerful to it, I think. And the last one here, this is an uncollected poem, and there's a quality to some of her poems. It's kind of been there in snatches in those two poems where you have this formal control, but there's kind of play with surrealism almost, and it's just really fascinating to me having that um, dreaminess, I suppose, and this strangeness to maybe what's being described sometimes, and yet, I suppose sometimes a whimsicalness, um, and yet there's a formal constraint to the poem as well at the same time. I find that really fascinating, and this is one I think I just read this today, and it's called "Some Dreams They Forgot." Some dreams they forgot. The dead birds fell, but no one had seen them fly, or could guess from where. They were black, their eyes were shut, and no one knew what kinds of birds they were. But all held them and looked up through the new far funneled sky. Also, dark drops fell, night collected on the eaves, or congregated on the ceilings over their beds. They hung, mysterious drop shapes, all night over their heads, now rolling off their careless fingers, quick as dew off leaves. Where had they seen woodberries perfect black as these, shining just so in early morning? Dark-hearted decoys on upper bough or below leaf. Had they thought poison and left? Or, remember, eaten them from the loaded trees? What flowers shrink to seeds like these, like columbine? But their dreams are all inscrutable by 8 or 9. So yeah, just a really weird, shifty, dreamlike, surrealistic poem. It has a formal rhyme scheme to it. Let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. It is, yeah, it is I think a Shakespearean sonnet. I'll double check. And yet there's that weirdness to it at the same time. So yeah, I just find it really fascinating. I've got a bit to go, but have been really enjoying her poetry and just thought I'd share a bit with you. So I hope that was interesting, and please let me know if there are other Elizabeth Bishop poems that you enjoy. There are a few famous ones that I could have read but decided not to. Um, Certainly, One Art is one that comes up a lot, and yeah, I didn't really feel like reading it. It just comes up so much, and so thought I'd leave that. But yeah, let me know if there are any others that you particularly like. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.